right, so it's another day and it's beautiful out in sunny California, and I'm going to read a little hidden talents to you. Let's see, we were looking at how the kids had made the discovery that they were going to be inspected by the community, and Walden's father somehow was involved in this, and that Bloodbath troop decided that they wanted to thwart this any way they could and get a bad review. So Martin has determined with his team that he wants them to help make it work out, because the devil you know is better than the devil you don't is his theory. So the fact that they know Edgeview School and they know the teachers, they could go somewhere else and find that it's really not as pleasant. So how will Martin's team take down Bloodbath and his gang? That's the question I want you to be thinking about as you listen and see what's happening. Martin already gave us a little, there was only one incident before the inspection, but it was a whopper, so we know something's coming. Alifrax Chemical Corporation. Dear Mr. Briggs, while reviewing our files, your application and resume came to my attention. While the position you applied for last year was filled internally, I am extremely impressed by your qualifications. It would be my pleasure to offer you an interview for the position of Senior Lab Manager for our East Coast Division. Please contact me at your earliest convenience so we might arrange a meeting that suits your schedule. Sincerely, Harlan Waterstone, CEO, Alifrax Chemical Corporation. Ooh, so Mr. Briggs is going to get a job offer maybe. Blow up. Back in the 6th grade, when I'd been an astronomy nut, I'd learned this neat word, zisk. I'm not sure how to say that. It's what they call it when several heavenly bodies line up. But a zisk can be bad news when earthly bodies are involved. Torchy found that out on Wednesday. We were walking along the first floor hall right after lunch. Torchy was ahead of me down the hall. Someone had left the door open on one of the broom closets. Hindenburg was ahead of us. He'd stopped near the closet to tie his shoe. The sight of his gas-filled butt pointing in my direction was enough to slow me down, but Torchy kept walking. Right when Torchy reached the closet, Bloodbath came along in the opposite direction. The three of them, Torchy, Hindenburg, and Bloodbath, were lined up perfectly with the open closet. Zigzag. Bloodbath took one look at the two of them, and I guess he just grabbed the opportunity. He charged into Torchy, knocked him into Hindenburg, and pushed both of them into the closet. Then he slammed the door shut and leaned against it. "Hey!" Torchy yelled from inside. He started pounding on the door. I wanted to help him, but I wasn't sure what I could do. "Come on," Torchy shouted. "I'm dying in here." "Gas chamber," Bloodbath said. Kids clustered around, getting close enough to see what was going on, but not so close that Bloodbath could reach out and snag them. "Please," Torchy wailed, "let me out. I can't breathe." He pounded on the door. I heard a louder crash. It sounded like Torchy was kicking the door. 2 more kicks jarred the door. I took a step closer, then stopped as I realized the danger of Torchy, the human flame, trapped in a closet with Hindenburg, the human gas tank. I turned and raced away. An instant later, along with the smash of the loudest kick yet, a huge whoomph of an explosion ripped the air. I glanced over my shoulder in time to see the door go flying, pushing Bloodbath across the hall. Too bad it hadn't flattened him. I'd have loved to have seen him knocked on his butt. Bloodbath took off, strolling down the hall as if he'd had nothing to do with the destruction. Torchy staggered out, gasping as the smell of the world's largest lit fart rolled through the hall. It was a good thing the inspection wasn't today. The smell alone would have been enough to close the school forever. Behind Torchy, Hindenburg stumbled out, looking dazed. "You okay?" I asked Torchy. It was awful. I can imagine. We hurried off to class. "We're going to get that guy, aren't we?" Torchy asked as we reached Mr. Briggs's classroom. "You bet." I tried to sound confident. I really wanted to score a few points for our side. That was all I thought about for the rest of the day. "What? Have you learned anything?" I asked Cheater that evening. The inspection was only 2 days away. He shook his head. It's not that easy. I told you. I get stuff people are thinking, but it's not like reading a book. I can't just look into someone's mind. I guess it's more like a radio, you know? Like when you're in a car and you start scanning through the stations? Maybe if you got closer to them, I suggested. Good idea, Torchy said. That's easy for you to say, Cheater told him. If you got in trouble with them, you could just set something on fire. I don't have any way to protect myself. I'm not going near those guys. I'm the kind of person they like tossing around. In case you hadn't noticed, Bloodbath isn't just mean and violent and ignorant. He's also prejudiced. I've noticed, Flinch said. I think we've all noticed. You can get sent somewhere else? I asked. Cheater shook his head. Do you trust us? Oops, you want to get sent somewhere else? I asked. Cheater shook his head. Do you trust us? I asked him. Cheater paused for a second, then nodded. Yeah. Will you take a bit of a risk? I asked. I guess, Cheater said. Then he asked me a question. Do you have any idea what you were doing? I shook my head. Not a clue. Espionage. Okay, I asked the group. How do we get Cheater close to Bloodbath? Without getting him killed, Cheater added. I know, Lucky said. Torchy could start a fire, and then when everyone's coming running to see what happened, that would give Cheater a chance to sneak up behind Bloodbath. Too dangerous, Torchy said. I'm just starting to get control. Yeah, Flinch said. And if there was a fire, they might accidentally serve us a hot meal. But some kind of distraction isn't a bad idea. I turned to Trash. Could you make some noise at lunch? I guess, Trash said. I could make some trays fall off a table or something like that. I nodded. That would do the trick. When everyone is looking, Cheater can sneak up behind Bloodbath and try to figure out what's in his mind. I know what's in his mind, Flinch said. Nothing, blankness, empty space. The final frontier. Zip, diddly, squat. Yeah, he used a lot of synonyms for that, didn't he? There's something rattling around in there, Torchy said. Yeah, Lucky agreed. I've heard it rattling. I'll do it, Cheater said, but I'm not sure if it's right. That surprised me. What's wrong with listening in on someone's thoughts? I asked. Well, it's kind of like spying, Cheater said. I hadn't looked at it that way. I guess people have a right to keep their thoughts secret. This was a special case, though. It's for a good cause, I said, right? Yeah, Cheater agreed. I suppose so. Hey, if I could read minds, I'd be thinking about how I could use my power to rule the world, I said. You sound like a cartoon character, Lucky told me. Flinch nodded. Martin Mindmaster, conqueror of the universe. Lucky started laughing. With his faithful sidekick Zucchini, who can read the minds of vegetables and fruit. Things pretty much collapsed after that. We didn't spend any more time working on our plan. The guys were too busy making fun of me. But I figured Trash would give it his best shot, and that was all I could ask. The next day, as we took our seats at lunch, nobody was joking around. You ready? I asked Cheater. No, but I guess that doesn't matter. He got up from the table, then looked at Trash. In a voice like someone from a bad Western movie, he said, Cover me. Trash nodded and turned so he could watch Cheater's path around the room. Cheater hugged the walls as he made his way over to Bloodbath's table. Then Trash focused his attention toward a table of runts. One of the runts slammed his fist down on the table. At that very instant, his tray flew up. It was almost breathtaking. The silverware and dishes seemed to dance in the air as they shot above the tray. Each piece took its own path, arching still higher, then falling toward the ground like spray from a silver water fountain. Wow, I whispered, wishing I could do that. Trash really was an artiste. Everyone looked over. I snuck a glimpse at Cheater as he rushed up behind Bloodbath. Cheater's face was scrunched up so much I wondered whether he was grunting. Bloodbath and the rest of the kids at his table were all standing to get a better look at the action. I heard another tray launch. There were shouts of protest from the Rents table. Cheater was still in place. Trash launched a third tray, then slumped back, breathing like he was exhausted. Oh no, I said, looking back at Bloodbath. He seemed to have lost interest in the flying trays. He sat back down, then started to glance over his shoulder. When Bloodbath saw who was behind him, it would be Cheater who'd get tossed up in the air like a piece of silverware. Trash groaned like he was lifting something heavy. A spoon catapulted from a bowl of pudding in front of the kid opposite Bloodbath. It hit Bloodbath right in the middle of the forehead. For an instant, the spoon hung in place, glued to Bloodbath's head by the legendary sticking power of cafeteria tapioca. Then, it slid down and fell to his tray. Cheater managed to get away as Bloodbath struck back at the kid opposite him, and a food fight broke out. He scurried over to us. "Well," I asked. "I picked up something about candles." "What about them?" I asked. He shook his head. "It didn't make sense. 30 minutes for a candle. I wish I knew what that meant." "Well," Lucky said, "that was a waste of time." I looked over at Bloodbath's table. "I don't know. It's kind of nice to see him with a face full of pudding." Several teachers came in and broke things up. Nobody got punished. At Edgeview, a small food fight was nothing. No bones had been broken. No faces had been smashed. "Now what?" Lucky asked as we left the lunchroom. I shrugged. "I wish I knew." In science class after lunch, Mr. Briggs was the first teacher to mention anything about inspectors. "Listen, class," he said. "There are going to be some people here tomorrow to observe our school in action." "Yeah, action," I heard Bloodbath whisper to one of his buddies. That drew some snickers and laughs from the back of the room. Mr. Briggs kept talking. "The important thing is for all of us to act the same way you would if nobody was watching. Just be yourselves. I'd appreciate it. And I'm sure the rest of the staff would too." One of the runts raised his hand. "Yes, Michael? What is it?" Mr. Briggs asked. "I heard they're going to close Edgeview. Is that true?" "They just want to see how well we're doing things," Mr. Briggs said. "If they feel we aren't giving you the best education you can get, they might want to make some changes. Even if they decide to make changes, it won't happen overnight. These things take time." He left it at that, but I knew my life was due for another jolt if the inspection didn't go well. I hung back in the room as the period ended and everyone else filtered out into the hall. "What is it, Martin?" Mr. Briggs asked. I wasn't sure. I wanted to say something nice, but I was afraid it would sound phony. So I asked about something that was on my mind, even though I didn't expect any real answer. "The school," I said. "I don't know if it's a good place or a bad place." "Few things are that simple." Mr. Briggs stopped and ran his hand through his hair, then took a deep breath. "I don't know if I should tell you this," he said, "but you'd probably figure it out sooner than later. Maybe you already figured it out." "What?" I had no idea what he meant. "Edgeview isn't just the last stop for students." I still didn't get what he was talking about. Instead of explaining, Mr. Briggs gave me his patented, "you figure it out" look. It hit me. Not just us, them too. "Teachers?" I said. Mr. Briggs nodded. Then he smiled an embarrassed grin. "I've been kicked out of more than one school too, Martin. Not for being bad. I just have my own ideas about how to teach. The people who run schools don't always like that. They don't like the way I dress." He glanced down at his Penn State t-shirt and jeans. "They don't like the way I teach. Sometimes they don't like the way I think." "So you've kind of gotten into trouble too," I said. The thought made me smile. Mr. Briggs nodded. "What about the rest of them?" I asked. "Are they all here for that kind of reason?" He shook his head. "I can't speak for them, but I don't think Edgeview was anyone's first choice." "Not even Miss Nomad?" I asked. He chuckled. "Maybe she's an exception, but that doesn't mean we aren't all trying our best. Not one teacher here is giving you anything less than his best effort. You might not think so, but I promise it's true." "It must be tough," I said, "ending up in a place like this when you don't want to be here." "Who said I don't?" Mr. Briggs stared out the window for a minute. "Maybe at first I felt I was getting shoved into Edgeview. But now that I'm here, I feel good. I feel good about the work I'm doing, and I feel good about myself. That's important." He held out his hand. "Whatever happens, it's been a pleasure." I felt strange to shake his hand. I dropped it after the briefest instant. For once, I had nothing to say. I hurried out to my next class. So I feel like this is a big moment, an aha moment, that we're seeing how Martin's behavior changes. And that's a great place to stop and pause and just consider the transformation that we're seeing of our character, because Martin is a round character, not a flat character. We see him evolve throughout the book. So take a moment to just think about that. That evening, as we hung out in the room, we tried to think of anything else we could do, but we were out of ideas. So we ended up sitting around talking about other stuff. I realized I'd really miss these guys if the school was closed. They were my friends. And here, at least, you were only considered abnormal if you didn't get into trouble. Maybe this was where I belonged. Maybe I'd been lying to myself about my behavior. When I first met Torchy, I thought he was the one who couldn't see how bad he was. Funny how things have changed. We'll just have to do our best tomorrow, I told them as the group broke up for the night. Our best can be pretty good, Flinch said. I smiled as I watched him leave the room. He was right. Our best really could be good. Memo from Principal Davies to all Edgeview faculty. Subject, state inspection. I know we discussed these issues in last evening's meeting, but I can't emphasize how crucial it is to keep control of the students during this inspection. While the inspectors have surely met students with various disciplinary problems, I don't think they are prepared for the worst of our residents. With that in mind, please make a special effort in the following areas. 1. Despite the cold weather, please be sure to leave at least 2 windows open in any classroom occupied by William Gressman. 2. If at all possible, avoid any conversations with Martin Anderson. As I am sure you all know, he seems to thrive on abusing his instructors. For this one day, try to ignore him. 3. Make a special effort to keep the small students away from the large ones. We don't want a repeat of last year's human volleyball game, especially not when there are inspectors present. Together, I know we can show them what a fine institution this is. And I will leave you thinking about that fine institution. And I want you to think about how will Martin's team take down Bloodbath and his gang. And we did hear that there's this thing about candles, and I don't think they've put it together, but I kind of feel like that little thought that Cheater stole might be more important than we realize. So go ahead and make some predictions and think about our story, and I'll share more with you later. Take care. Bye.